The 50th Law by 50 Cent and Robert Greene. Picture this. It's a beautiful spring day in May 2000. A young rapper sits in a car outside his grandmother's house in Queens, New York, on the absolute brink of stardom. His debut album drops in just a few weeks. Years of grinding on the streets, clawing his way into the music industry, are finally about to pay off. Then everything shatters in an instant. Another car rolls up, an assassin steps out and opens fire. 9 bullets hit their target. One rips through his jaw, missing a fatal artery by less than a millimeter. Lying there, bleeding out, most people would assume this was the end. But it was actually just the beginning. That young man was Curtis Jackson, soon to become 50 Cent. His record label dropped him. The industry blackballed him. Friends vanished. By every measure, his career and nearly his life were finished. But here's the thing. What happens when you face the absolute worst? When you stare down death itself and survive? What's left to be afraid of? That's the beating heart of this extraordinary book, The 50th Law. It's an unlikely collaboration that somehow works perfectly. On one side, there's Robert Greene, a master historian and author of the classic 48 Laws of Power. On the other, 50 Cent, a street hustler turned hip-hop mogul and business empire builder. Greene recognized in 50 Cent a living embodiment of the historical titans he'd spent his life studying, a modern Napoleon Bonaparte, forged not on European battlefields but on the ruthless streets of Southside Queens. Together they crystallized a life philosophy built on one profound principle: fearlessness. This isn't about becoming a rapper or a gangster. It goes much deeper. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through a blueprint for completely transforming your relationship with fear. We'll explore a mindset that lets you see the world with crystal clarity, turn every obstacle into an opportunity, and build a life of total self-reliance. By the end, you'll understand that your fears are a prison, and the less you fear, the more power you'll have, and the more fully you'll live. Our story begins with the greatest enemy any of us will ever face. It lives inside us, whispering constantly, telling us to play it safe, keep our heads down, avoid risks. That enemy is fear. For our ancient ancestors, fear was straightforward and protective. It was the alarm bell that rang when a predator approached, allowing them to retreat and survive. But something strange has happened in our modern world, which is infinitely safer than the one our ancestors knew. Our fears haven't lessened. They've multiplied wildly. We're no longer just afraid of physical threats. We're terrified of what people think of us, of offending someone, of standing out. We're anxious about our future, our status, our health. This isn't the sharp, focused fear that saves your life. It's a low-grade, generalized anxiety that colors every decision we make. It turns us into timid, conservative creatures who see risk in every opportunity. The authors argue that this fearful attitude is a prison we build for ourselves, keeping us from living with power and purpose. But throughout history, certain individuals have managed to break free. They're the fearless types, and they didn't learn this in a university. They were forged in the crucible of adversity. Think of Napoleon Bonaparte, who came of age during the bloody chaos of the French Revolution. He navigated battlefields and political minefields where one wrong move meant the guillotine. He emerged with a spirit that didn't just tolerate chaos but embraced it. When his generals told him the Alps were impassable in winter, he famously replied, "For Napoleon's army there shall be no Alps," and led his men through on a mule, catching his enemies completely off guard. For the fearless, obstacles simply don't exist. Or consider Frederick Douglass, born into the absolute horror of slavery, a system built entirely on creating fear. At every turn, Douglass chose the exact opposite of what the system demanded. He taught himself to read, a crime punishable by severe whipping. When he was whipped, he fought back and noticed he was whipped less often afterward. He escaped to the North with nothing and became a leading abolitionist, defying even his allies to found his own newspaper, an act unheard of for a former slave. At every stage, When faced with resistance, Douglas didn't shrink back. He raised his level of boldness. This is the physics that all fearless types discover. When you face impossible circumstances, you don't back down. You ratchet up your self-belief and your energy. Which brings us back to the streets of Southside Queens in the 1980s, during the crack epidemic, a modern Wild West. This was the world that forged Curtis Jackson. His education in fearlessness began with the most primal fear, abandonment. He never knew his father, and his mother, a tough street hustler herself, was murdered when he was just 8 years old. Think about that for a moment. At an age when most of us worried about homework or playground games, his reality was complete isolation. No one to turn to for protection or guidance. If he felt fear, he had only one person to rely on: himself. This forced him to develop radical self-reliance from the very beginning. His first lesson in power came from observing the world around him with what the authors call intense realism. On the streets, you can't afford fantasy. You have to see people and situations for exactly what they are, not what you wish them to be. An older hustler named Truth gave him the key. The greatest danger isn't the police or a rival. It's your mind going soft. If things go well, you get complacent. If they go bad, you start wishing things were different. Either way, you lose your grip on reality. And on the streets, that's a death sentence. So Curtis sharpened what he called his hustler's eye. He learned to look past people's words and see their true intentions. He studied street dynamics, learning who was trouble and where opportunity might lie. This is a skill we all need, because the corporate world, the academic world, any world you enter, is just as full of ruthless hustlers as Southside Queens. They just hide it better. Realism isn't about being cynical. It's about clarity. It's the ability to see things as they are, which gives you the power to change them for your purposes. This realist's perspective led to his next great lesson: self-reliance, or, as he saw it, owning your own empire. After a short stint in a rehabilitation center, Curtis came back to the streets with nothing. A friend offered him a job bagging drugs for a daily wage. He was broke, so he took it. But on the very first day, he had a sickening realization. He was now hired help. He had to show up on time, take orders, and bow to someone else's authority. He had lost his freedom. He understood that a hustler's true empire isn't physical. It's not the corner he works or the money he has. It's his time, his energy, his creative ideas, and his freedom to move. The moment you work for someone else, you give that empire away. You become a pawn in their game. He knew he had to get out. So he used his hustler's mind. He taught the other baggers how to put slightly less crack in each capsule while making it look full. In return for the trick, they gave him the extra product. Within a week, he had enough to start his own operation again on his own terms. He swore he would never work for another person again. Years later, as 50 Cent signed to a major record label, he felt that same feeling in their corporate offices. The executives lavished him with money and perks, but in exchange, they wanted to own him. His music, his image, his decisions. He was becoming a high-paid bagger all over again. So he went into full hustling mode. He used their system as a university, learning everything about the business, from marketing to production. He secretly planned for the day he would declare independence and build his own empire on his own terms. True ownership, he learned, can only come from within. It's a disdain for anything that limits your mobility and supreme confidence in your own decisions. With this foundation of realism and self-reliance, he was prepared for the third and perhaps most powerful lesson: opportunism, or the art of turning garbage into gold. Which brings us back to that day in May 2000 and the 9 bullets. Lying in his grandparents' house, recovering from his wounds with his career in ruins, he could have sunk into depression. It would have been the logical response. But as he listened to the radio, all he heard was fake, packaged gangster rap. The so-called tough guys on the radio were rapping about a life they'd never lived. And a powerful realization hit him. The shooting wasn't a curse, it was a blessing in disguise. He had never been a fake studio gangsta, and now he had 9 bullet wounds to prove it. This was his ultimate opportunity. All the negatives, no money, no label, a price on his head, could be flipped into positives. With no executives to please, he could make his music as raw and real as he wanted. The bullet fragments still in his tongue gave his voice a slight hiss, a menacing slur. He didn't try to fix it. He amplified it, making it part of his new identity. His life and death reality made for a compelling spectacle. People had to listen to his music now, before he was actually killed. He felt he had nothing left to lose, and that feeling was the source of tremendous freedom and power. He launched a relentless mixtape campaign, attacking the industry, parodying popular songs and creating undeniably authentic sound. He turned his lack of distribution into a strength, encouraging bootleggers to spread his music like a virus. He turned every single piece of garbage thrown at him into gold. And the world couldn't get enough. This is the ultimate alchemy. Understanding that events themselves aren't positive or negative, they're neutral. It's your mind that frames them. By seeing every setback as a challenge, a wake-up call, you can transform it into an opportunity for power. As his legend grew on the streets, he mastered the 4th principle, calculated momentum, or the power of flow. He learned this lesson from a gangster named Greene, who tried to run the neighborhood like a rigid corporation, creating a monopoly with fixed prices and rules. Greene hated chaos and wanted control. It got him killed. Curtis realized that trying to micromanage a chaotic world is futile. The answer isn't to fight the chaos, but to move with it, to be fluid like water. He started experimenting, running 4 or 5 hustles at once, knowing one would always work out. He stayed connected to his customers, adapting to their changing tastes. He never got tied to one way of doing things. This is the hustler's flow. In the business world, he saw executives acting just like Greene, clinging to old models, afraid of change, disconnected from their audience. 50 did the opposite. He diversified, moving into ventures no one expected from a rapper, like vitamin water and book publishing. He used the internet not as a static marketing tool, but as a living organism, to connect with fans, get feedback, and experiment constantly. The world is in constant flux. Those who are rigid and try to hold on to the past will break. Those who are fluid and adaptable won't just survive, they'll thrive. But this fearless approach will inevitably bring you into conflict with others. That requires the 5th lesson, knowing when to be bad, or the intelligent use of aggression. We live in a culture that tells us to be nice, cooperate, not ruffle feathers. But reality is full of aggressive and passive-aggressive people who will try to block or harm you. If you're afraid of confrontation, you'll be pushed around your entire life. As 50 Cent learned in the schoolyard, the kid who doesn't want to fight always goes home with a black eye. This isn't about being a bully, it's about being strategic. When his rap career was just starting, he saw that the top of the charts was dominated by Ja Rule, a rapper who projected a tough gangsta image but, in 50's eyes, was completely fake. He knew the industry was crowded, and talent alone wasn't enough. He needed to be bold. So he engineered a masterful setup. He began releasing diss tracks attacking Ja Rule, not with mindless insults, but with wit and humor, painting him as a wangsta, a wannabe gangsta. Ja Rule, being arrogant and insecure, took the bait. He responded with rage and violence, trying to intimidate 50 Cent, but in doing so, he played right into 50's hands. 50 stayed cool and strategic, while Ja Rule became emotional and defensive. The public saw a calculating, clever artist taking on a clumsy, angry bully. 50 won the battle, not with muscle, but with strategy. He knew when to be the fox, cunning and deceptive, and when to be the lion, bold and aggressive. You must learn to do the same, using aggression not from emotion, but as a calculated tool to advance your interests and defend your ground. This kind of strategic thinking is essential for anyone in a position of power, which leads to the sixth quality of the fearless, leading from the front. Authority in the modern world isn't something that comes with a title. It has to be earned. In the hood, respect is everything, and it's not given. It's proven through action. Early in his hustling career, an older rival named Wayne put a hit out on Curtis. Wayne didn't do it himself. He tried to get a younger kid to do his dirty work. Curtis saw the weakness in this. Wayne was leading from the rear. He was afraid. So Curtis acted boldly. He personally confronted and scarred the would-be hitman, then shot up Wayne's empty car, a clear message that he wasn't afraid to get his own hands dirty. The word spread like wildfire. He had outsmarted and outnerved his rival. He led from the front. The greatest leaders in history, from Napoleon to Patton, understood this. They were seen by their troops, sharing their risks, leading the charge. This inspires a level of loyalty and respect that no order from headquarters ever can. In business, this means you work harder than anyone. You hold yourself to the highest standards. You take responsibility for tough decisions. You don't ask for sacrifices you aren't willing to make yourself. Your actions, not your words, set the tone for the entire group. Of course, to lead effectively, you must understand the people you're leading. This is the seventh principle, knowing your environment from the inside out. Most people create something first, then look for an audience. The fearless hustler works the opposite way. You start with the public, with their needs, desires, and frustrations. You crush the distance between you and them. Early on, Curtis learned that the most successful dealers didn't fear or look down on the drug fiends. They studied them. They used testers, giving out free samples to get immediate feedback on their product. This not only told them if the product was good, it also built relationships and created a network of information. The fiends, in turn, told them everything: what the police were up to, what rivals were doing, what the word on the street was. This is about deep connection. When you feel superior to your audience, it comes through in your work. It feels patronizing and disconnected. But when you see the world through their eyes, when you truly understand what they want, what you create will resonate on a visceral level. This is why 50 Cent's website became such a powerful tool. It wasn't just for marketing. It was a global focus group, a way to get unfiltered feedback, test ideas, and stay connected to the base that gave him his power. You must never lose touch with your environment. Feedback and criticism aren't attacks on your ego. They're gifts that bring you closer to reality. This deep connection to your work and audience requires patience and dedication, which brings us to the eighth law. Respect the process, the path to mastery. In the hood, Curtis was surrounded by the illusion of fast money, robberies, quick schemes that promised instant riches. But he saw that people who fell for it always ended up broke or dead. They were trapped in a cycle of impatience. Real, lasting success, he realized, came from the slow grind. It came from showing up on the corner every single day, enduring the hours of boredom, and treating the hustle like a craft. Our culture worships speed and ease. We want results without the work. We fear boredom more than anything. But there are no shortcuts to mastery. Every great figure in history, from Mozart to Michael Jordan, endured thousands of hours of tedious practice. They learned to find pleasure, not in the end result, but in the process of getting better, step by step. Boredom is a test. If you can withstand it, if you can find focus in the repetition, you develop a mental discipline that's the foundation of all power. This discipline allows you to master yourself, your impatience, your need for constant distraction, and in doing so, master any skill you choose. When you respect the process and develop true mastery, something powerful begins to happen. You cultivate the ninth quality, a deep and unshakable self-belief. Your sense of who you are determines what you get in life. If you see yourself as limited and helpless, the world will confirm that belief. But if you believe you're destined for something great, you'll begin to act in a way that makes that destiny reality. Curtis Jackson was born into a world that told him he was destined for prison or an early grave. The statistics confirmed it. But in his own mind, he was a king, a leader, a man destined for freedom and power. This wasn't arrogance. It was a survival mechanism. He decided that his self-worth would come from him alone, never from the opinions of others. This is the key. People will constantly try to impose their limits on you. They'll attack you with doubts about your abilities and your worth. If your self-image is fragile and dependent on their approval, you'll break. But if you have an inner core of self-belief, their attacks only make you more determined. It was this self-belief that allowed 50 Cent to stand in a room full of young men after the shooting and paint a vivid, unshakable picture of the empire he was going to build, and to make them believe it as much as he did. People are drawn to those who know where they're going. You must cultivate that air of certainty, not as a show, but as a deep conviction in your own destiny. And this journey through the principles of fearlessness brings us to the final, ultimate law, the sublime, the act of confronting your own mortality. Of all our fears, the fear of death is the most profound, and the one we work hardest to avoid. We repress the thought, filling our lives with distractions to keep it at bay. But this fear seeps into everything we do. It makes us cling to safety and comfort. It makes us afraid of change, of separation, of the unknown, because all of these are small echoes of death itself. The fearless path isn't to run from this reality, but to confront it, accept it, embrace it. When 50 Cent came so close to death, it had a profound, clarifying effect. He understood how short life is, and how precious every moment is. He felt he had nothing left to lose, and this gave him a feeling of incredible power and urgency. When you confront your own mortality, your sense of proportion changes. The petty squabbles, the anxieties about what people think, the small setbacks, they all fade in importance. You realize what truly matters. You develop a sense of mission. You appreciate the beauty of life more deeply, precisely because it's temporary. As the Stoic philosophers knew, if you can overcome the fear of death, there's nothing left to fear. This is the 50th law. It's the ultimate reversal, turning the greatest negative in life into the most powerful positive. It's the source of a lightness and freedom that few ever experience. It's the final key to unlocking a life of absolute power. As we wrap this up, what do we take away from this powerful and admittedly intense philosophy of life? The 50th law isn't just a book of strategies. It's a profound meditation on the nature of fear and the incredible potential that lies on the other side of it. The collaboration between a classical historian like Robert Greene and a modern cultural icon like 50 Cent is what makes this book so unique. It shows us that these principles of power and fearlessness aren't confined to ancient battlefields or royal courts. They're timeless. They're just as relevant on the streets of Queens as they were in the Rome of Marcus Aurelius, and they're just as relevant in your life today. The most powerful lesson for me is the idea that our reality is shaped not by our circumstances but by our attitude toward them. We're all dealt a hand in life. For some, like 50 Cent or Frederick Douglass, that hand is unimaginably difficult. For others, it's more comfortable. But the book argues that the hand you're dealt is far less important than how you decide to play it. Are you playing from a place of fear, seeing every card as a potential loss? Or are you playing from a place of fearlessness, seeing every card as an opportunity, a challenge, to prove your mettle? This isn't a call to be reckless or immoral. It's a call to be conscious. It's about understanding that the world is a competitive, often harsh place, and being naive about that fact doesn't make you good. It makes you a victim. Knowing when to be bad, when to be strategic, assertive, and even a little cunning is an essential life skill for protecting your interests and achieving your goals. So how can you start applying this philosophy today? You don't need to get shot 9 times to have a life-changing epiphany. You can start small. First, practice intense realism. For the next week, try to observe the people and situations in your life without judgment or wishful thinking. Don't focus on what people say. Focus on what their actions reveal. Try to see the reality behind the appearance. This clarity is the first step toward power. Second, reclaim a small piece of your empire through self-reliance. Identify one thing you've been depending on others for, whether it's advice, a solution to a problem, or just validation. Make a conscious decision to handle it completely on your own. Feel the power that comes from not needing anyone else's help or approval. And finally, confront a small fear. Do something that makes you uncomfortable. Have that difficult conversation you've been avoiding. Take on that project you feel you're not quite ready for. Step into the arena you normally shy away from. You'll discover, as all fearless types do, that your fears were exaggerated, and that on the other side of that confrontation lies a stronger, more confident version of yourself. We've journeyed through the core principles of the 50th Law today, and I hope it's given you a glimpse into this powerful way of living. But honestly, a summary can only scratch the surface. The real power of this book lies in the stories, the details, and the way the ideas build on one another. It's in those quiet moments when you're reading, and a single sentence makes you see your own life in a completely new light. This exploration was designed to help you see if this book is a good fit for your own journey. If anything we've discussed has sparked something in you, I encourage you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning a new set of rules. It's about experiencing a shift in your own spirit, one that can truly change how you face every single day. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable and want to continue exploring ideas from the world's most powerful books, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next deep dive into another transformative book from the Billionaire's Bookshelf. Let's keep learning and growing together.